Exodus 32. In just 3 more weeks, we will all have the privilege and great honor of hearing from a much better preacher, as Eric expounds Exodus 35. Exodus 32. Intercession. Have you ever engaged in intercessory prayer? Have you ever found yourself so deeply burdened for another? Whether it was for another's health or for another's salvation. Or maybe for a Christian brother or sister's discipline. Have you ever found yourself so burdened that you found yourself interceding on behalf of another? What does intercessory prayer look like? Now, I've got a lot of Pentecostal friends claim to have an intercessory prayer ministry. And Armenian friends that claim that they are interceding on behalf of their friends and loved ones. But oftentimes their prayers are constructed in such a way that it's almost as if they're trying to twist God's arm into doing something that God hasn't chosen to do. It's almost like they're trying to get God to change His mind. When you and me intercede, it's not so that we can get God to do something that He hasn't already chosen to do, but rather we are attuning our spirit and our mind to God's Word. Let's look to Moses' example. Moses doesn't come begging and pleading, but rather Moses stands upon that which God has already declared. When you pray for the salvation of your kindred and acquaintance, when you pray for the health needs of those around you, what is your posture? What is your attitude? How do you direct those prayers? Are you directing those prayers emotionally? Or are you directing those prayers as instructed by God's Word? Isn't it interesting that the people of Scripture knew how to pray far better than me and you? And in the case of the folks in the Old Testament, particularly in the case of Moses, Moses was writing those first 5 books, and probably Job. Job had nothing of a written Bible. God was delivering the Torah and Job to Moses. The people of the Old Testament only had half of what you and me have. But they knew how to pray better. We got God's completed revelation. And how poorly do we pray? We come today to the golden calf. The golden calf. It would be real easy for you and me to say, you know what? These children of Israel, they were dull and dense. It would be real easy for us to point back at them and say, how could you, after you saw the devastation that God wreaked on Egypt, after your firstborn were preserved, after God brought you through the sea, after God made the bitter water sweet, after God provided manna and quail, how could you? But how often do you and me set up golden calves? How often do you and me set up golden calves? In fact, it's jokingly reported, or jokingly said, that in a lot of established churches, well, that's a sacred cow when it comes to this or that. Because established churches, especially the longer that they have been in existence, all have those things that they cannot let go of. It had meaning. It had significance when the original folks did it. But now, several generations removed, it doesn't have the same meaning. It doesn't have the same significance as it had back here. There's a lot of churches in this area, in Versailles and Rimwood County, that Moses is presumed dead. And they're looking to their Aarons. And they're saying, make us a God that we can worship. First 6 verses of Genesis 32. And when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mount, people gathered themselves together unto Aaron and said to him, Up, make us gods, which shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we wot not what has become of him. And Aaron said unto them, Break off the golden earrings which are in your ears, which are in the ears of your wives, of your sons, and of your daughters, and bring them unto me. And all the people brake off the golden earrings which were in their ears, and brought them unto Aaron. And he received them at their hand, and fashioned it with a graving tool, and he made it a molten calf. And they said, These be thy gods. This man, just a couple of chapters ago, was named the high priest. This man for whom vestments were made to set him apart. This man who would be the only one during his lifetime to enter into the Holy of Holies, representing Israel on behalf of Yahweh. Does this. The people said, These be thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. When Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made proclamation and said, Tomorrow is a feast to the Lord. They rose up early on the morrow, offered burnt offerings, and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and to drink, and rose up to play. Lord Jesus, speak through your word. For we are listening. In your name we pray. Amen. Moses, as I've already said, is presumed dead. The people turned to idolatry, and Aaron allows liberalism. That's plain and simple what it is. They call it idolatry. God called it idolatry in the Old Testament. God called it idolatry in the New Testament. We today in our culture call it liberalism, but guess what? It's the same idolatry. Whether we call it liberalism in our day, or we use the word that God called it, it is idolatry. Aaron gave the people license to liberalism and idolatry. How is liberalism idolatry? Because it denies the substitutionary sacrifice of Jesus. We should be making much of the cross of Christ. The cross of Christ must be central to our faith, lest we have a faith. Without the cross, we're just here. Without the cross, there's no reason for us to gather on Sunday mornings. Without the cross, there's a million other things that we could be doing. Liberalism not only denies the cross, but they deny the vile state that you and me are in. They deny that you and me are depraved individuals. They deny that you and me and all of creation was affected by the fall. In fact, they have to deny the effects of the fall and the depravity of man in order to cast the substitutionary atonement by the wayside. Because if they held to depravity and the effects of the fall, they would of necessity have to make Christ's atonement important. Liberalism wants to find a canon within a canon. And depending on which liberal you talk to, will determine which canon is to be believed. Some liberals say, well, I like the Sermon on the Mount. So Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7, that's my canon. Throw everything else by the wayside. Some liberals say, well, I like the red letters. So that's my canon. Throw everything else by the wayside. Some liberals say, you know what, I like the New Testament. Because God's a God of grace. Whereas in the Old Testament, He was a God of judgment and wrath. So throw the Old Testament by the wayside. Either all of Scripture is Scripture and is useful for doctrine, for teaching, for reproving, for rebuking, for training in righteousness, or none of it is. We cannot afford to say this is valuable and this is not valuable. Think about these earrings. I remember back in the 80s when it first started getting popular for men to wear earrings. My sister would have been about 3 years old at the time. And Dad was military. Military guys don't we're having a very set uniform. My sister saw this guy with the earring and said, "Dad, that guy's got an earring." Dad just says, casually says, "Well, he thinks he's a girl." Well, a couple days later, my dad's got my little sister, and they're at a big store. And there's this great big dude, and he's got an earring in his ear. And my sister says, "Daddy, that guy thinks he's a girl." And he's like, "No, let's go." Those words came back running real fast. But what were these earrings that it said the wives and the sons and the daughters were wearing? These were a sign of slavery and of idolatry. What do we read in Moses? What do we read about the folks who, after they served the 7 years and were allowed to be free, but they chose to keep serving their master? What would they do? Well, and not just with a needle like we would. I mean, they go up next to a big pillar and drive a stake through there. That dude don't think he's a girl. That is one bad dude. But also, they were a sign of idolatry, because they were slaves in Egypt. The earrings that they wore in Egypt was not only a sign of their slavery, but it was a sign of the idolatry that was prevalent. And it infiltrated into the covenant people of God. The people who were worshiping this golden calf were serving the gods of Egypt, and they were engaging in gross immorality. They had abandoned God after they told him that they would keep his commandments. Do you remember, as we walked through the book of the Exodus, how God delivered his law? We'll obey it. Now Moses is up here. We haven't heard from him in a while. We think he's dead. How quickly they forgot the promise they made. They said they would keep his law until the going got tough. The going got tough. The tough got going. They abandoned the God that they claimed they loved. They abandoned the God that they had claimed to obey. Are we any different? Are we any different? It wasn't that long ago. Indeed, it was 2020. 2020. There wasn't a church in this area that was holding services. All because of a little virus. Which, if we believe Genesis, when was that virus in existence? What? From the beginning. God created all things in 6 days. The virus was an airborne virus. So I'm inclined to believe that when God said he created the fowl of the air, that's more than just birds. Because when we look at the various dinosaurs that are extinct, we realize that there were flying reptiles. The fowl of the air is anything that flies or moves through the air. I'm inclined to believe that this virus, indeed all viruses, were created and were lumped in under that bow of the air. Now, at the creation, the virus didn't have the same effect. Because, what have I previously said? The fall changed everything. When God created the virus and everything else, what did God say of it? It was good. Now, we don't know what the purpose of viruses and bacteria and fungus was prior to the creation. But we know that God created it, and it was good. Indeed, what have we found out about other things that God created? Back in the 60s, the hippies started promoting marijuana for recreational purposes. What do we know now? When I worked at Central State Hospital, I had a sales rep for Lawson Products. He had kids that lived in Colorado. And he said that out in Colorado, because they have legalized marijuana, there's this balm that he could get. He was an older guy, so he had really bad arthritis. He had this balm that he could get, and he could rub it into his joints. And he said he could move in a way that he couldn't move without that balm. All things that God created are good. The fall affected everything. Churches today have lapsed into idolatry in a way that was formerly unthinkable. Churches have lapsed into idolatry in a way that was formerly unthinkable. Think about 2015, when the Supreme Court ruled on Bernafel versus Hodges. I read of a Presbyterian Church USA that for some time period had chosen not to serve and partake of the Lord's Supper. They had chosen rather that they wouldn't take the Lord's Supper until everybody in their congregation could take it on equal terms. The Sunday after Bernafel versus Hodges, guess what they had placed as a covering over their communion table? A rainbow flag. And the so-called pastor said, now we can take the Lord's Supper. Never mind the fact that Paul says that eating and drinking this in an unworthy manner, eat and drink damnation. Some have fallen sick, and some have died because they ate and drank of the cup of the Lord in a manner that was unworthy. There are a lot of churches in this area that don't go to that extent. But how many churches in this area treat this supper as just a mere act, devoid of any meaning or significance? How many churches in this area treat that bread and that cup as if it's just something that we do? Indeed, I would submit that any church that says, oh, we can only take this once a quarter, only on Fifth Sunday, because we don't want it to become rote and routine. is making it rote and routine. Because most churches that have communion tables have written across the front of the communion table what? This do in remembrance of me. How many are pausing during their supper? Giving attention to the gospel message that is proclaimed visibly beyond us. Whereas most, it's just something that they do. I've seen churches that the men come down, they grab the trays, and they start passing it out, and they're not small like what we are, so it goes down one set of pews, and you take the bread, and another tray comes up, and you take the juice, and as soon as you take the bread and the juice, you eat the bread and drink the juice by yourself. It's a very convenient and fast way of doing it. But this is the communion supper. This is a sign and an act of unity. And when all you're doing is just passing it through, then it's clear that you're just trying to get it over with so that you can check off the box. Did that. Then we look at condemnation of Israel's apostasy, verses 7 through 14. The Lord said to Moses, "Go, get thee down, for thy people, which thou broughtest out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves." Do you hear what God's doing here? He says they're Moses' people, that Moses brought them out of the land of Egypt. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made them a molten calf and have worshipped it, and have sacrificed thereunto, and said, "These be thy gods, O Israel, which have brought thee up out of the land of Egypt." And the Lord said to Moses, "I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Now therefore let me alone, that my wrath may wax hot against them, that I may consume them, and I will make thee a great nation." God's angry. God's holiness has been violated. What do we know about God's holiness? God's holiness cannot tolerate sin. Adam was banished from the garden because of sin. When Moses struck the rock, Moses was prohibited from going into the promised land. When Saul acted unrighteously, the kingdom was taken from him and given to another. Moses besought the Lord his God and said, "Lord, why doth thy wrath wax hot against thy people?" God said, "Your people." Moses says, "No, they're your people." "Which thou hast brought forth out of the land of Egypt, with great power, and with a mighty hand. Wherefore should the Egyptians speak and say, For mischief did he bring them out, to slay them in the mountains, and to consume them from the face of the earth? Turn from thy fierce wrath, and repent of this evil against thy people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, thy servants, to whom thou swearest by thine own self, and saidest unto them, I will multiply your seed as the stars of heaven, and all this land that I have spoken of will I give unto your seed, and they shall inherit it forever. And the Lord repented of the evil which he thought to do unto this people." Israel's redemption was based on what? I'll tell you what it wasn't based on. It wasn't based on their superiority. It was not based on their superiority, because the other peoples of the world at that time outnumbered Israel. The other peoples of the world at that time, they had military might. They had weapons of warfare. They had infrastructure. They weren't superior. And they definitely weren't more moral. They make a promise, they abandon God. God says, you know what? I can keep my covenant. I can keep my promise that I made to Abraham through you, Moses. And God would have been right to do that. Because who is Moses? Moses is in the line of Jacob and Isaac and Abraham. God could have absolutely destroyed everybody, started over with Moses, and still maintained his promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moses, though, prays. And he offers one of the greatest examples of prayer in all of Scripture. God says to him, and Moses speaks honestly and frankly to God. When was the last time you and me spoke honestly and frankly to God? A lot of churches still have what they call prayer meetings. But how many of those prayer meetings are actually devoted to prayer? And if we're really honest, how many of those prayer meetings are more about gossip? I would submit to you that there are far too many churches that should really change the name of their prayer meeting to gossip meeting. Because that's what they are. When you spend the majority of an hour talking back and forth, sharing more detail about individuals and circumstances than what any of us really need to know. And then at the very end, you tag on, well, let's pray. After you've spent 50 plus minutes in meaningless talk, now you take 2 minutes to pray. What is that? That's not a prayer meeting. That's a gossip session. If more of us gave attention to honesty and frankness with God, our churches would see more of the power of God. Not only would our churches see more of the power of God, but our churches would see folks who hungered and thirst for righteousness in attendance. But right now, most churches don't offer the power of God. Most churches don't offer anything for those who are hungering and thirsting for righteousness. These are not Moses' people. They belong to the Lord. The Lord is the one who brought them out of Egypt. The Lord is the one who promised to multiply them. And the Lord is the one who promised to bring them into the land. Moses stands on what in his prayer? He stands on the Word of God. Far too many times we stand on trite expressions. Far too many times we stand on vague generalities. Far too many times we stand on intuition and fables. What would happen if we stood on the Word of God? Lord, we stand in the need of prayer. We won't go into the details of this man, but But Lord, you know the situation. Lord, we place it in your hands. If it's your will to heal him, then do so. If it's your will not to heal him, then thy will be done. What was the Lord's response? The Lord heard Moses' prayer because Moses stood on God's word. Think about Romans. Let's turn to Romans 8:28 real quick.
Did you say Romans 8?
Romans 8:28. The Scripture says, and we know that what? All what?
All things.
So that's not some things? That's not most things? And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. All things work together for good. All things we know are not good. It's not good when someone has cancer. It's not good when someone dies in a car accident. It's not good, you fill in the blank. You've experienced enough life to know what life can throw at you. But what is the promise of Scripture? All things work together for the good to those who love God, who are the called according to his purpose. Let's make that the prayer of our hearts. Because when we make that the prayer of our hearts, we're not looking at the situation where that's our life and that's all we can see. When we make that the prayer of our hearts, then we look at all of these squares that make up this floor. And our life is small in comparison to eternity. Your life is small in comparison to God's plan. All things work together for the good of those who love him, who are the called according to his purpose. And God's response is, he spares his people. He spares his people. He didn't spare his people because Moses twisted his arm. God had already chosen from the foundation of the earth to spare Israel in this. But he used this as an opportunity to raise Moses up. So that Moses would intercede on behalf of the people. Because what do we know about God? God works through covenant. God covenanted with Adam. God covenanted with Noah. God covenanted with Abraham. God covenanted with Moses. And each of these men with whom God covenanted points forward to the new covenant, which is in Jesus' blood. Moses is raised up as an intercessor for Israel, even as Jesus is shown in the letter to the Hebrews as our great high priest, interceding at the right hand of God for you and for me, even as he sits on David's throne. We see judgment in 15 through 29. Moses turned and went down from the mount. The two tables of the testimony were in his hand. The tables were written on both their sides. On the one side and on the other side were they written. The tables were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God, graved upon the tables. And when Joshua heard the noise of the people as they shouted, he said to Moses, "There's a noise of war in the camp." And he said, "It is not the voice of them that shout for mastery, neither is it the voice of them that cry for being overcome, but the noise of them that sing do I hear." And it came to pass, as soon as he came nigh to the camp, that he saw the calf and the dancing. They were clearly not Baptists. Moses' anger waxed hot, and he cast the tables out of his hands and brake them beneath the mount. And he took the calf which they had made and burned it in the fire, and ground it to powder, and strawed it upon the water, and made the children of Israel drink of it. And Moses said unto Aaron, "What did this people unto thee, that thou hast brought so great a sin upon them?" And Aaron said, "Let not the anger of my Lord wax hot. Thou knowest the people, that they are set on mischief. For they said to me, Make us gods, which shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we wot not what is become of him. And I said to them, Whosoever hath any gold, let him break it off. So they gave it me, and I cast it in the fire, and there came out this calf. And when Moses saw that the people were naked, for Aaron had made them naked and their shame among their enemies. Then Moses stood at the gate of the camp and said, Who is on the Lord's side? Let him come unto me. And all the sons of Levi gathered themselves together unto him. And he said unto them, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, Put every man his sword by his side, and go in and out from the gate to gate throughout the camp, and slay every man his brother, and every man his companion, and every man his neighbor. The children of Levi did according to the word of Moses. And there fell of the people that day about 3,000 men. For Moses had said, Consecrate yourself today to the Lord, even every man upon his son and upon his brother, that he may bestow upon him a blessing this day. Israel was living in sin, characterized by nudism, sex, and dope. And Aaron lied. Aaron says, I just told them to break off their jewelry, had them throw it in this fire over here, and voila, a calf emerges. Mom and Dad had some friends, Steve and Melanie. I can't remember the last name now. They were assigned to Hawaii. They had two boys, Daniel and Drew. They were home. They were old enough where they were able to stay home for short periods of time. They'd gotten into trouble, so they decided they were going to cover up their mischief. So they wanted to clean the house for them. So they get to root through. They found furniture polish. The house had hardwood floors. Obviously, furniture polish was going to work on hardwood floors. At least it's going to look good. Melanie comes home. She takes one step on that hardwood floor that's been furniture polished. And I think, if I recall correctly, I think she said she bit the dust. And she knew immediately that they had been up to some sort of mischief and they were trying to cover up. She said, the floors looked the best they'd ever looked. And the house smelled really good because of the furniture polish. There's a good smell to it. But that's the same way of thinking. That Aaron is a grown man. And he's trying to cover up his mischief by furniture polishing hardwood floors. It's almost like when your kids were little, you had the cookie jar up here. Kid positions, different furniture and books and whatnot, so he can get up to where the cookie jar is. And you walk in the room, he's got his hand in the cookie jar. I'm not doing anything. That back there in particular. Moses laid hold to the heart of God and he moved the hand of God. Moses laid hold to the heart of God and he moved the hand of God. Because what is the heart of God? The heart of God is that He had called Israel out from among the people of the world. The heart of God is that Israel were His jewels. The heart of God was that it was from Israel that He would introduce the world's Messiah. J. Vernon McGee says that sin is an awful cancer. And God uses extreme surgery, in this case, by slaying those who were guilty. What's it say? 3,000. 3,000 were slain in that day. Now think about these men. When we read 1 Corinthians 10, these were men that were baptized. These were men who took the Lord's Supper. Because what does Paul say in 1 Corinthians 10? They were baptized in the cloud and in the sea. They ate of the spiritual drink. They didn't know the way I meant it. They ate of the same spiritual food and drank of the same spiritual drink. So they received baptism. They received the Lord's Supper. And now they receive the Lord's discipline. The reality is, the only person's salvation that we can be assured of is our own. I can only be assured of my own salvation. You can only be assured of your own salvation. That's why Paul tells us in Galatians about the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, long-suffering, goodness, kindness, gentleness. Church discipline is necessary because the enemy will sow tares into the Lord's congregations. The enemy will introduce goats in among the sheep. And when those goats, when those tares become evident, they have to be removed. In the case of Israel, 3,000 were slain in one day. Judgment must be serious and extreme against terrible sin. What would have happened if God would have let these 3,000 men that led Israel in the worship of the golden calf remain alive?
You corrupt it all.
Yeah. Bad company corrupts good morals and good character. Liberalism creeps into churches, and often Christians allow it to stay unchecked. The PCUSA didn't go from being a faithful denomination to placing the rainbow flag over their communion table all at one time. But rather, liberalism creeps in a little bit here, a a little bit here, a little bit here. And God's people let it remain unchecked. If those men had been allowed to live, then Israel would not have entered the promised land. Compromise is softness toward liberalism, especially within the Lord's churches. And compromise is immoral. Remember when I was in the Salem Baptist Church teaching the men's Sunday school class, I said, if it walks like a duck and looks like a duck and sounds like a duck, what is it? And Harry Myers said, Aflac. Finally, we see the intercession of Moses in 30 through 35. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses said unto the people, Ye have sinned a great sin, and now I will go up unto the Lord. Peradventure I shall make an atonement for sin, for your sin. Moses returned unto the Lord, said, O this people have sinned a great sin, and have made them gods of gold. Yet now, if thou wilt forgive their sin, and if not, blot me, I pray thee, out of thy book which thou hast written. The Lord said to Moses, Whosoever hath sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book. Therefore now go, lead the people unto the place of which I have spoken unto thee. Behold, mine angel shall go before thee. Nevertheless, in the day when I will visit their sin upon them. The Lord plagued the people, because they made the calf which Aaron made. The cross removes sin. Both in Moses' day and in our day, the cross is that which removes sin. Sin is sin, and you must agree with God in confession. And finally, what do we see? Moses identified. If you receive, Lord, Moses' final statement as he intercesses for the people, Lord, if this is what your heart is bent on, then blot me out. Moses identifies with the people of Israel. When you intercede for your kindred and acquaintances, do you identify with them? That, as we've heard the gospel message, as we've been called to biblical intercession, standing on God's word, moving the heart of God, moving the hand of God by the heart of God. How do you respond? If today you've never received Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, seek someone out and settle this matter today. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, sanctify our hearts. Call those who have never publicly confessed to you and to yourself. It's in your name we pray. Amen.